Hello book lovers, and welcome back or welcome to Nakat's Bookish Cafe, and welcome to quarter two's Buzzwordathon challenge vlog. Alright guys, believe it or not, we are going into the second quarter of the year, and this year I'm challenging myself once a quarter to read the 3 books that I need to read to fulfill the prompts for the Buzzwordathon. So I have already done first quarter where I read books for the January, February, and March prompts. I will have that linked up above, and in this video I will be reading April, May, and June's prompts. If you're unfamiliar with the Buzzwordathon challenge, this is hosted by Kayla by Books and Lala, and I will have her announcement video listed down below where she kind of talks about this challenge. Technically, there are 2 parts to this challenge, one involving book titles and one involving book covers. However, I only focus on the book covers because I think it gives me a little bit more wiggle room, and I do try to read only books off of my physical TBR because it's big and I need to prioritize it. In this vlog, we are going to be doing things a little bit differently than in the first one. In the first one, I already had books picked out because in the month of January, I played my TBR game as I do in odd numbered months. And so I needed to have books that fit the Buzzwordathon prompts as well as my TBR prompts. However, in the month of April, I am not playing my TBR game, so I have essentially free reign to read whatever I want within the prompts, obviously. And I have been wanting to randomize my TBR for quite a while, so I am going to be selecting the books using a spinner wheel. I'm gonna go ahead and select the books as I go along. You'll probably already know what they are because they will be in the thumbnail. I, at this point, don't know any of the books that I'm gonna be reading in this vlog. Fingers crossed. I love all of them. But essentially, I'm going to go ahead and take a few books that work for the prompts that are on my physical TBR, put them on a spinner wheel, and then randomly select it. So we're going to go ahead and start with the month of April. And essentially, we need an accessory on the cover. We need some sort of jewelry, scarves, hats, sunglasses, whatever else, fanny packs, whatever your heart desires as far as accessories go. So let's go ahead and head over to the wheel because I have already made it. All right, so we should be recording. Here you see my spinner wheel and I have 10 books on here. Now, the way that I decided to select these is I have 5 books that are off of my Kindle because I am trying to prioritize some of those Kindle books that I like to forget about. So I did put 5 of those on there. And then I also chose 5 physical books off of my TBR. Going through them real quick, the first 5 are the ones from my Kindle. These I don't know a lot about because I got them during Stuff Your Kindle days, so I haven't exactly dived deep into their synopses or anything like that. The first one is going to be Lust. He is wearing a necklace. Obviously, all these images are relatively small right now, so I don't know how well you can see it, but he is wearing a necklace. This is, as far as I know, at least I'm assuming, a paranormal fantasy romance, male. It is obviously going along the lines of the 7 deadly sins. This is the first book in the series. That's all I know. Then we have Mage and the Dragon Prince. He is also wearing a necklace, and this is obviously between a mage and a dragon shifter who is also a prince. Once again, male romance. Then we have Off With Her Head. This is a sapphic retelling of, what's it called? Alice in Wonderland. And that has kind of like a tiara crown on it. Then we have Play by Heart. This is a contemporary male romance between a musician, a well-known musician, and he meets someone that he falls for very strongly. However, this man appears to be straight, at least in the beginning, and he's wearing quite a bit of jewelry. He's got the bracelets, the ring, the necklace. And then the final one from my Kindle is gonna be, is it called Unhinged Titan? Let me make that a little bigger. What is it? I think it's called Unhinged Titan. And this is a assistant coach hockey player, male romance. And the guy's wearing a hat. And technically he has his little whistle, but I don't really think that's considered an accessory. It's more like a tool. But he's got his backwards hat, which I would consider an accessory. Then for the 5 physical books, I went ahead and took one book from last month's TBR, my March TBR that I didn't get to, and that is The Husky and His White Cat Shizun. This is a Danmi novel. Essentially, it is a boy love novel that is originally written in Mandarin, and this is fantasy kind of and historically inspired. Then jumping down to these two, these are 2 books that are on my spring TBR because I do want to go ahead and prioritize that, so I figured I'd put them on there. We have Imogen, obviously. I always kind of struggle with her name. She is wearing earrings. I forgot to mention for this one, they have a bunch of like hair ornaments and stuff that they're wearing. But this is a contemporary. I'm not quite sure if it's young adult or new adult, but it's kind of a queer awakening story that is sapphic. And then we have The Fox and the Dryad, which they have plenty of ornamentation as well, rings, jewelry, all that jazz. And this is a fantasy male romance. These are just 2 that are on my shelves that I want to read. We have The Proposal. He is proposing with a wedding ring. That is an accessory. And this is a contemporary adult romance as far as I know. And then we have The Prince of Endless Tides. And this is a fantasy male romance inspired by The Little Mermaid. And he has kind of this like shell kind of shoulder pad situation going on. But those are our options. I am so scared to see which one we're actually going to choose. I think I would be relatively happy with any of these. Obviously, when it comes to the ones on my Kindle, I don't know as much about them, but they're all queer and I'm happy to read that. So let's go ahead and shuffle 3 times just for funsies to mix it all up, and then we're gonna spin for the first one. Oh my gosh. Oh, I feel like I need to cover my eyes. Okay. Oh my gosh. I'll keep closing my eyes. Oh my gosh. Oh. Prince of Endless Tides by Ben Alderson. Okay, let's talk about it. All right, so as far as the physical books go, this one is the chunkiest at almost 500 pages. I did not look to see how long the ebooks are, but if there's one thing I know about romance ebooks is they're usually pretty long. But I'm still assuming this was probably one of the longest books on this wheel. So is it a good thing that I got it? Is it a bad thing? I have been wanting to read this book for quite a while, so I'm gonna go ahead and say it is a good thing. This is technically gonna allow me to complete a series, which is really great for my goal of completing 11 series this year, because I did not manage to finish a series in the month of March. So this is part of the series. Let me see what this series is called. Darkmoor Universe books. So this is the Darkmoor series by Ben Alderson, and this is the 4th book. All of these books are technically companion novels. So you can read them as standalones, but I have already read the first 3 in this series, and every once in a while there are mentions of like events or characters from the other books. This one, like I said, is a Little Mermaid retelling, and they are all queer. The first one was kind of inspired by Beauty and the Beast, I believe, because it was like a mage vampire situation. Then we had a Hades and Persephone one, which was actually my least favorite, which isn't surprising because Hades and Persephone isn't really my jam. Also, most of these are relatively paranormal, but that one is more fae based. And the third one went back to the more paranormal aspect, which I enjoyed, and that was a Red Riding Hood retelling with a werewolf, so that one was fun. But I have been chomping at the bit to get to this book, especially because I follow this author and he shares like art from this book of these characters, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I have to read this book. So essentially in this book, let's actually see what it's about because it's been a while since I've read the synopsis. Okay, so I didn't want to get too deep into it, but I got a general idea that we have a prince who seems to have the ability to control people, like with his voice, and his father, the king, has been using that for his benefit. And it seems our prince gets bit by a mermaid, and this is starting to turn him into a mermaid as well. And I think it has also taken his powers. Now, we also have our little tentacle man, or not little, quite large. We have our large tentacle man here, and he was pretty much killed by his mother, but he made a deal with the sea god for immortality, and in exchange for that, he has to kill every mer person that he comes across, which is of course problematic when he starts to fall for our prince, but our prince is turning into a mermaid, and once he does, you know, his obligation to the king of the ocean or the god of the ocean will kick in, and he will have to kill the man he loves, which he does not want to do. So that is the book that we're going to be getting into. I think it's going to be a great start to the vlog. I think it's great that I get to continue a series, but it'll also be easy for me to talk about this book without spoiling the other books in the series because they're not that deeply interconnected. And it's also a book I've really been looking forward to. It is on the chunkier side, but since it is a romance, I have a feeling that I'm going to read it relatively quickly. So as usual, what I do is I check in after about the first 50 pages or so. I do see that this seems to have multiple parts, and part one ends at around page 80. And considering how long this book is, I might wait until then to jump in and give you guys my initial thoughts on this story. And hopefully I enjoy it as much as book 1 and 3, and that I'm not feeling lukewarm about it the way that I did book 2. Hello everyone, I am coming at you from the floor because I might have spent my hard-earned money on this chair, but clearly it's not my chair. So I'm just gonna sit here on the floor while my cat enjoys the spoils of my 40-hour work week. I don't really think I mentioned it when I first updated you, or like when I was introducing this vlog, but this background, I think in my last vlog you saw me painting this arch, and obviously since then we have put the shelves in and everything, and I am just so happy with how it turned out. This room is still very much in progress. We've had a couple of setbacks, as in that I keep trying to order stuff and it is either a scam yeah, or it's on back order to the point where it's like not even worth waiting for it because it's just not coming in. And yes, I have been scammed not once but twice during this process. Luckily I haven't lost any money to it. One of the websites never got around to actually charging me, and the second one was through Etsy, and Etsy takes responsibility for that and pays you back. But I have had to go ahead and close my credit card and am waiting for a new one to show up, which has been very annoying for the last few days because I can't buy anything. And also this all happened on the 31st of the month, which obviously means I closed my credit card right before a bunch of like my auto pay stuff is supposed to go through. So I have to like contact a bunch of people to change that and just like give them a heads up that if they try to bill me, it's going to bounce, which is annoying, but that is life. So it took me a little longer to get through the first 80 pages of this than I thought I would, but that's because I was dealing with all of that, and obviously now I need to look for those items that I initially thought I had found and don't exist or are just not available. So it's a struggle, but we persist. That being said, let's talk about part one of this book. So I am 81 pages into this book, and I would say so far that everything that has kind of happened at this point is what's laid out in the synopsis. We have essentially been introduced to our characters. It does seem like it's going to be a dual POV story, and we've been kind of given some information about like the world, a little bit about like our characters' magic, kind of hinted at that there's the possibility of gods being real, but they've been rather dormant. We've learned a little bit about the mer people, who are these very hungry, dangerous beings that seem to be growing more dangerous and bolder. Every single year they are killing more and more of the kingdom's fishermen, and the people are looking to the king to do something about that. And in the past it seems that the people would sacrifice people to the oceans to appease the god of the ocean in hopes that he would kind of protect them from the mer people. And so there's a lot of talk about starting some human sacrifices again, which, you know, isn't a good thing. But that being said, one of our main characters is Ernest, which is not a name I love. I'm gonna be honest, not loving the name Ernest, but this is like a inspiration, not quite retelling, but it's definitely inspired by The Little Mermaid. So he's supposed to be the Eric characters. I would have rather he just be Eric. But what can I say? His name is Ernest. And he has this magical ability that comes from his voice. If you look at the cover, you kind of see this glowing light like right on his throat, and it's kind of like inspired by when you watch the Disney Little Mermaid movie, you know, when she like sings and Ursula takes her voice and it's like that little light that like comes out of her. That's essentially like what that is. So when he sings, he is able to put intentions behind the music. Like he doesn't have to sing specific words, he can sing like any song, but as long as he's thinking the intention of what he wants to happen, that'll happen. People will go ahead and do it. But it seems like it's stronger than just getting people to do certain things, because he was trying to use his voice to heal someone with a lung disease. So it almost seems like he can change physical aspects of people and heal them. But unfortunately for him, the king, his father, is a very cruel man and does not allow his son to use his powers for good. He mostly has him use his powers for, well, his father to gain more control over the kingdom and possibly expand beyond that. And our character Ernest is definitely in an abusive relationship with his father, which is really difficult to read about. I know that the book that came before this, again, a companion novel, so you didn't have to read it, but the other book, the Red Riding Hood inspired one called Alpha of Immortal Flesh, our character was in an abusive marriage. And there's something about this author that the way that he writes abusive relationships like really upsets me, like in a way that it's supposed to. Like he's really good at writing them, which is unfortunate because it makes the reading experience a little bit unpleasant if I'm being honest. So it's been really difficult to watch Ernest go through that, and also frustrating. I can't help but be a little frustrated with Ernest. There's a part of me that understands he's been under this man's control for his entire life. You know, obviously being in an abusive relationship, it mentally and physically impacts you, but Ernest isn't the only one that's being hurt by his father. Like he is standing by while his father hurts other people and kills other people, and that's hard to watch. And sometimes it's a little hard for me to understand Ernest's behavior because I just want him to take his magical powers that he has. He has the magical powers, and tell his dad to jump off a cliff. Like he has a magical ability to make his dad do that, but he's not doing it. So it can be a little bit frustrating, but essentially every year on Ernest's birthday, there is a big gathering. Everyone comes to see him sing because they're like, he has such a lovely voice, but he puts the intention of loyalty within people so that they are extra loyal to the king. So obviously that is not good because it allows the king to get away with things that he shouldn't be getting away with. On top of that, our other character is Killian. He is this tentacle guy. I don't think he always has tentacles because he's kind of roaming around on land as well. It kind of seems that when his mother killed him, which is in the synopsis. Like I said, people used to sacrifice people to the sea god to appease him. He was one of those sacrifices, and the sea god actually ended up taking him, saving his life, and combining him with this beast. So Killian actually has two hearts because he and this beast are combined, and they serve the god of the ocean by killing these mer people. And Killian has been doing this for hundreds of years, and he is desperate for freedom. And our two characters meet in a very unfortunate event where there is a mer attack on Ernest and he is bitten. And if you are bitten by a mer person, it's almost like being bitten by a zombie. You essentially then become a mer person. So he is starting the process of turning into a mer person, and Killian ends up saving him because the other humans want to kill him, because usually that's what you do to stop an infection. You kill the source of the infection and then burn the body. But Killian decides to save him because he's hoping that Ernest can use his powers to help Killian with his freedom. However, when this mer person bit Ernest, she also stole his voice. So he no longer has a voice. He no longer has his magical abilities. So obviously our two characters are going to have to work together to help him get those powers back. And per the synopsis, it kind of sounds like things are going to escalate a lot more with the mer people, and possibly also with the gods potentially getting involved. So that is where I'm at. I'm at the point where Ernest has been bitten. He has lost his magical abilities. He has lost his powers. He has been taken by Killian into the ocean so that he can live, because as someone who's turning into a mer person, he would die on land. And that is where I'm at. I will say so far, my enjoyment of this is kind of mid. However, I have a feeling that now that our characters are together and that we have kind of set the stage, things are going to get a lot more interesting. And also, now that I don't have to deal with Ernest's bitch ass father, excuse my language, I might enjoy the story a little bit more as well. 80 pages in, enjoyment is kind of mid, but I see the potential and I'm eager to go ahead and continue with the story. Now, this book has 6 parts in it, so I think after I finish every part, I might pop in, unless I finish a part that's like short, because some of them are a little shorter, then I might, wait a couple parts or so. So this might have more than my usual amount of check-ins. Usually I check in like 3 times during a book, the first 50 or so pages, midpoint, end of book. But this one being a lot longer, I might check in like 4 or 5 times. So depending on if I have anything to say, I may check in with you at that point. Otherwise, I might wait until around closer to the 250 mark.
It comes and goes in the blink of an eye. Soon as I swear you've been left behind, all the colors come back so bright. Wish I could keep you in black and white, sorta like a picture in a drawer I don't wanna look at anymore, but it's too hard to ignore that I'll never not feel like yours. Holding on to someone new's the only time I feel like I'm still holding on to you. It's like an instant rewind to New Year's Eve at midnight. Taste your lips like Napa red wine. Wish I wasn't looking back on you, but I still do. Deja vu, deja vu, deja vu. It comes and goes like the pull of a wave, here for a second and down the drain. I'm getting dizzy doing double takes. I'm overseeing you and everything, but it's too hard to ignore that I'll never not feel like yours. Oh no, holding on to someone new's the only time I feel like I'm still holding on to you. It's like an instant rewind to New Year's Eve at midnight. Taste your lips like Napa red wine. Wish I wasn't looking back on you, but I still do. Deja vu, deja vu, deja vu. Holding on to someone new, it's the only time I feel like I'm still holding on to you. It's like an instant rewind to New Year's Eve at midnight. Taste your lips like Napa red wine. Wish I wasn't looking back on you, but I still do, I still do. Deja vu, deja vu.
All right, everyone, welcome to my messy in progress office. I am taking a quick moment here while I'm on a break from work to go ahead and update you on this book. So I did not end up checking in with you at the end of part 2. I am checking in with you at the end of part 3, page 228. So a little further than I initially was going to check in with you, but also not quite at the 50% mark of the story. Essentially, every part of the story is going to be a day. And this is because our character has obviously been bitten by this mer person and is starting his transformation into a mer person. What happens is that during the day he's a human, however at night he turns into a mer person. And the longest someone has survived without like fully being consumed by the monster of the myrrh that is growing within them is 6 days. Hence why there are 6 parts in this book, because he really needs to find some way to stop this curse essentially before the 6-day mark. Now, that's actually not really his main priority right now. There was this kind of like cult like following of the goddess of death, which I feel like I mentioned it at some point because it has been playing a part in the story since the beginning, but I can't really remember what I have or haven't said at this point. But essentially there are these people, yes, I did mention it because I said that they were a group of people that believed that the god of the ocean requires human sacrifice, human blood, in order to be appeased, and they want to bring back human sacrifices. And they have been growing in number, and they have really kind of been expanding throughout the kingdom. And obviously, as a group, acolytes, they call themselves. I'm just gonna call them a cult, you know, if it quacks like a duck, if it walks like a duck, all that stuff. And they are obviously a cult of death, and so they're killing a lot of people. They are killing pretty discriminately if you're not part of the cult. Woman, child, elderly, they're down to kill you. And obviously our character as the prince feels like it is his responsibility to bring a stop to this, which is very difficult when he has lost his magic. And he also feels like him losing magic has kind of brought this all about. Obviously he's not able to kind of whisper loyalty to his father to the people through his singing voice, and so everything has kind of fallen apart. And he is trying to find the mer person who bit him and stole his voice so that he can try and get it back. And obviously we are going into part 4, so day 4. So things have escalated pretty quickly within the first 3 days of our character finding himself in this position. These acolytes, this cult is moving very fast. And this is like a cult that held a lot of power for a while and then essentially lost a lot of power for many years and is now coming back into power. And Killian, our tentacle guy here, has a very strong connection to this cult because he and his mother were a part of it. Now, I don't really feel like that's a secret because that is brought up in the prologue. That is essentially why he died. We know that his mother killed him because she was part of this death cult, and she felt that it was her job to sacrifice her child. So obviously he has a lot of trauma around this cult, and that is definitely being brought up as he is being forced to face these people again. And I feel like it's interesting because my initial thought while reading this is like, where did all these cult members come from? It was like they were just suddenly there one day, like out of the blue in large numbers. Like, are we supposed to believe that we just didn't know that they were there or something, or that we wouldn't have heard whispers of this movement growing or anything? But I feel like in a post-MAGA America, you can really see how power can switch very quickly, and when power switches, how quickly people are willing to switch their loyalties. So I feel like if I had read this like many years ago, I would have been like, this is very unrealistic. But as someone who lives in Trump's America, I'm like, yeah, no, that makes sense. Group of people wearing red robes who seek to punish anyone who isn't part of them, who are really part of a death cult. I know there are people that call MAGA a death cult because of how many people they wish to exterminate. So I definitely can see how the author would have been inspired by our current political climate. Let me see when this was initially published, back in 2023. So it is pre his current election, but it is definitely post his first election. So I can definitely see him being inspired by that throughout the story. As far as the plot goes, I think pace-wise, it's keeping me entertained. I feel like nothing like super dramatic has happened, but I can definitely see how things are escalating and how the author is really kind of building this sense of like desperation within our characters as they are really faced with the reality of what this cult is doing and how they are really running against the clock, not just because they're like, oh, we have 6 days before Ernest loses himself to the myrrh, but every single day that they don't take this cult out, more and more people are dying. So we're not even trying to wait until the last moment here. We're trying to solve this problem like tonight. Obviously, this is a romance. The romance has not started yet. This is definitely a very slow burn. It definitely started off as them being enemies. Ernest has tried to kill Killian on multiple occasions. And Killian is definitely infuriated by Ernest, but he's also drawn to him, and the same kind of goes for Ernest. He is constantly like feeling something warm towards Killian, and then he's like quickly stuffing it down, but that's becoming more and more common. So it's definitely a very slow developing relationship where both characters are kind of trying to like ignore that it's happening, and also they're kind of trying to focus on other things, which I appreciate. You know, people are dying, children are dying. Let's go ahead and focus a little bit more on the plot than on the relationship. But I can definitely see like the author kind of sprinkling in little hints that these characters are starting to really kind of understand each other a little bit more. They're a little bit more on the same page. Obviously, they're physically attracted to each other, but emotionally, that connection is growing as well. So I'm having a decent time. I would say I've really started to like Killian as a character. I think that he's a little bit more complex. I think as this being who is very powerful and who has been very lonely and isolated for the last 100+ years, he is definitely known for being like a monster, and he has the capability of being quite monstrous, but it is also very clear that he is someone who has trauma, and he's also someone who cares about innocent people being hurt, and he is more and more coming to care for Ernest. And some things that he really likes about Ernest is the way that he is so dedicated to his people. Like, he really appreciates Ernest's willingness to put himself in danger for other people. That's something he respects. Ernest, on the other hand, is growing on me. He definitely was giving kind of spoiled brat energy in the beginning, which I found a little bit surprising. He is a prince. Obviously, princes tend to be a little bit more spoiled, no surprise there. However, he didn't really grow up as a prince. You know, that was a position that he and his father kind of took magically when he was a little bit older, and he obviously was in a very abusive relationship with his father. So I feel like he is a little bit bold and snarky and sassy for someone who has been verbally abused for so long in his life. So I feel like based off of his past, his character doesn't quite feel right, but obviously different people respond to abuse differently, and it could definitely be that he's lashing out because, you know, he spent so long not being able to lash out, and now he kind of feels like he has the strength and courage to do so. I don't know, but he is starting to grow on me a little bit. He's becoming a little bit less selfish. I feel like he was definitely someone who was very focused on his little bubble, his little life. And now that he's out in the real world, he's outside of that bubble, he's starting to kind of realize how his and his father's actions have impacted other people. And he's kind of starting to realize that, you know, he might have been like, hey, I care about people all his life, but his actions never reflected that. And now his actions are starting to reflect the fact that he does care about the people within his kingdom. So he's growing on me a little bit. Hopefully he grows on me fully once they actually start a physical and romantic relationship, because obviously at this point I kind of see the physical attraction between the two of them, but I don't fully buy the emotional connection. And for me, emotional connection is really important. And I would say at this point, I'm still feeling a little bit like Killian could do better. Like, I don't fully think Ernest deserves Killian at this point. But like I said, he's been growing on me. So I feel like we just had an event that really has caused Ernest to lock in, and I have a feeling that that's going to cause a pretty drastic change in who he is as a person. This is the kind of event that alters a person, and hopefully in this case for the better. Continuing to enjoy it, not like absolutely loving it, but I'm happy to say that my enjoyment for it has increased. So hopefully as I reach the 50% mark and get into the second half of the story, I will only continue to enjoy it more and more.
Your parents came in the cul-de-sac, leaned back in a leather-clad seat, pack of spirits in your Prada bag. Suburban summer 17 was a roller coaster ride, a manic pixie dream girl right beside me. And she said she liked me, but I bet it was a right thing lining up at the wrong time. And I think maybe if I'd held on tight, she'd still be sitting by my side. I'll never know, I'll never know. I don't like messing with regrets, but I doubt she'll ever leave my head. What could I have done, could I have said? I'll never know, I'll never know. And I kinda like that. Came from different sides of the crosstown tracks. Guess it's true sometimes opposites attract, but it never lasts. So maybe it was just the right thing lining up at the wrong time. And I think maybe if I'd held on tight, she'd still be sitting by my side. I'll never know, I'll never know. I don't like messing with regrets, but I doubt she'd ever leave my head. What could I have done, could I have said? I'll never know, I'll never know. Oh, I'll never know, I'll never know. Oh, I'll never know, I'll never know. You made a country club pool feel like Malibu Beach. Sure, your parents had money, but you like to drink cheap. Should've known the first moment you're out of my league, but you said you liked me. Oh, I bet it was a right thing lining up at the wrong time. And I think maybe if I'd held on tight, she'd still be sitting by my side. I'll never know, I'll never know. I don't like messing with regrets, but I doubt she'll ever leave my head. What could I have done, could I have said? I'll never know, I'll never know. Oh, I'll never close, swear it's alright. Baby, I feel the rush. Everything that you touch turns to gold. I know. Baby, I'm missing you. Everything that you do makes me love you. Oh. Tell me everything. You know I'm listening. Hours pass us by. Yeah, we could talk all night. Taking my time, messing my life, swear I don't mind. Say that you'll stay holding me close, swear it's alright. Baby, I feel the rush. Everything that you touch turns to gold. I know. Baby, I'm missing you. Everything that you do makes me.
All right, guys. So I have finished this book and I was reading that ending and I was like, wait, what? Okay, because all of these books are technically standalones, but sometimes the other characters make appearances, and usually when they do, it comes towards the end of one of the novels, and that's kind of like what happened in this situation. However, the way that it ended, I was like, wait, this isn't the end of the series. Like, it very clearly was like, there's going to be another book. I thought this was going to be the last book, but sure enough, I went onto the internet, and on his Substack, the author, about like 11 months ago, he announced that he has officially come up with the plot and characters for the 5th book. It's gonna be a Goldilocks story where the character is gonna have 3 love interests, and that is gonna be the final book. So, in other words, this has not completed a series for me. I'm caught up, but I have not completed a series. So, a little bit of a bummer there, but it is what it is. It happens to the best of us. But I have gone ahead and finished my first book of this vlog, and I think I'm gonna go ahead and give this a solid 3.5 stars. So for me, a 4-star is a book that I really enjoyed, but you know, maybe there's just not anything new or special about the book, or I feel like it's not going to stick with me for a long time, but I had a good time with it. And a 3.5 essentially is that for the most part, I had a really good time with it. However, there were some things that were just holding me back from fully enjoying it. I had a good time with this. I thought it was a good retelling of The Little Mermaid. I enjoyed the plot and the direction that the story took. I thought that the magic was really interesting, the way that the author decided to use it, the way that the gods played into all of this. So I enjoyed that. I enjoyed the way that there was a strong female side character and the role that she played throughout the story. That was great. The relationship did grow on me, but I still felt like I had a slight disconnect to the characters, especially Ernest, throughout the story. And since I never fully connected to the characters as individuals, I couldn't fully connect to them as a romantic pairing either. I mean, I won't say that I don't think that they belong together, but I feel like the fact is that this story takes place over like 6 days, and so even the characters are like, hey, I feel like I'm falling in love with you. So this is very much like a romance where even by the end of the book, they are just kind of coming to the point where their relationship is developing into love. And so maybe because they're not quite at the love stage yet, it makes sense because they've only known each other for 6 days, but it also means that I don't really feel 100% about the relationship because the relationship isn't at 100%, and you know, that's okay. Outside of that, I think the plot was decent. I did enjoy that. I did feel like the villain was a little bit of a cackling caricature of a villain, so sometimes it was a little hard to take her seriously because she was like, "Mwahaha, I am so evil and this is my plan." So that sometimes feels a little bit cheap, but for the most part, I did enjoy this story. I'm glad that I got to it. I will be intrigued to pick up the third one. I don't think I've ever read a retelling of Goldilocks. It's not a fairy tale I'm particularly familiar with. So, but I do love a book with multiple partners, so I think I will enjoy that. I will say the writing in this book, it wasn't bad or anything like that, but there were a few times, and I don't know if I mentioned this already, but there were a few times where I couldn't help but feel like this could have used one more run through by an editor, where there were like some typos and stuff that I felt were pretty obvious, and grammar and stuff is not my specialty. So the fact that I could point it out and everything, I feel like it could have used another edit or so, but I don't think that these are traditionally published. I have to look into it because I know that the author has books that are traditionally published, but I'm not sure if these are that, if they're indie published or if they're self-published. But either way, I think it needed another edit or so, but I had a good time with it. It was fun, and despite being almost 500 pages, I did read it relatively quickly, so an enjoyable read. So that being said, that is the first book of this vlog. I'm probably gonna chill over there by my parents, you can see them, by the fire pit for a little while, and then once I get back into the house, I have already set up the spinning wheel for the second book of this vlog. We are going to be looking at May's prompt, which is to have a border. We have a lot less options for that one. It's a little harder to find a book with a border on it, but we are going to go ahead and bring out the wheel again, so I will see you over there in just a moment. All right, guys, I am here to film. I'm not like really in the middle. Where am I? You know what? 2 of my light bulbs, 2 of them, those 2 right there are dead. I don't know if they just died today or if I didn't notice it before. So it's a little dark here. I am at my desk corner. I have bought a lamp for here, but it's not here yet. So it's just a little bit dark. But let's go ahead and pull up our wheel that I have created. Alrighty, here we are. So as you can see, this time we only have 6 options. So essentially what I did is I went and saw how many options I have on my Kindle, since that's more restricted, and then I did the same amount for my physical books. And honestly, I don't know how many more I could have found with my physical reads because they were pretty limited as well. As I said, this prompt is for there to be a border on the cover. So let's go through our options real quick. I'm going to be looking over here at my screen. So starting once again with the Kindle books. Again, I don't know the synopses of these as much, so if I select one of them, I will have to go look that up. I will have to look that up. So the first one we have is A Dream of Fire. This is, I believe, just a fantasy story. It is one of the older books on my Kindle. I must have gotten it for free at some point, but I don't think it's like queer or anything like that. So it is like straight up just fantasy. And then we have The Angel's Kiss. This one is a male-male romance, and I think it is fantasy, but also a little paranormal, because I think we're dealing with like demons and angels. So that could be good. And then the final one on my Kindle is going to be Strictly Ballroom. This is obviously a contemporary romance, male-male, involving ballroom. They're ballroom dancers. So then the 3 books that I found on my physical shelves, essentially took the first 3 that actually had something that resembled a border. The first one was Compound Fracture by Andrew Joseph White. This is his young adult book that came out probably a couple of years ago at this point that I haven't gotten around to yet. So I wouldn't mind reading that one. We then have Sorcery of Small Magics. This, I believe, is a standalone fantasy with romance, which is also including a male-male romance. And then we have Masquerade. This, I believe, is a fantasy. I want to say I remember it being a Hades and Persephone retelling, but I don't think it really has a romance element to it from what I remember, because I usually am not a big Hades and Persephone fan. Don't know if I would have picked it up if it was a romance, but we'll see once I look at the synopsis again. So those are the 6 options. Let's spin, or first, let's go ahead and shuffle 3 times. 1, 2, and 3. And now we're gonna spin, and I'm gonna close my eyes because I'm so scared. I don't really know what I want. Oh, a Sorcery of Small Magics. So it looks like we're gonna go ahead and read one of my physical books again. These wheels are just not choosing my Kindle books. All right, so Sorcery of Small Magics is written by the author whose first name I cannot for the life of me pronounce. So let me actually Google how you pronounce this name, because I don't know. How do you pronounce Maiga? Okay, it's French. This is a French name. Typically pronounced Myga. Myga. Mygah. Okay, let me listen to the audio because clearly I don't know what I'm doing.
Maiga.
Myga.
Maiga.
Myga. Okay. So this book is by Myga Dochi. And as far as I know, this is a standalone fantasy in which we are following 2 sorcerers who I believe don't get along. And then one of them ends up getting cursed by the other accidentally, where he has to do whatever that other person tells him to do, and they need to figure out how to break the curse. Now I have heard someone give a review for this where they're like, hey, just want you to know that this doesn't get like super toxic where they force him to do things that like he doesn't want to do. Like, this is handled really well, which is good to know, because otherwise things could get very uncomfortable very quickly. Okay, yeah, so it does seem like this is gonna go ahead and be a bit of a rivals to lovers situation where they are gonna go ahead and go on a bit of a journey to find a sorcerer who has the ability to undo the spell that they accidentally cast on each other. So I have a feeling that this is going to go ahead and be a fun time, and I am looking forward to it. As you can see, this has kind of a border. It's very symmetrical to itself, where it has the plants kind of around it. It's not like a full border, but I figured it was enough of a border for it to qualify for this prompt. So I'm gonna go ahead and get started on this. This bad boy is a little bit shorter than the last one, where it is under 350 pages. So I probably once again will check in with you around the 50-page mark here to give you my initial thoughts. Super excited for the Wheels second choice. All All right, everyone, time for a very quick check-in. I have a little bit of my break left, and I have reached exactly page 50 in this book. Not too much has happened outside of like the event that is the catalyst for the rest of this story. Essentially, we have been introduced to our character, Leo, and he is kind of like at this university of sorts for people who are learning magic. And it seems that last year he was kind of kicked out, but he's been allowed to return for his final year, but he's definitely kind of on like probation. They're kind of keeping a really close eye on him. He doesn't actually want to do magic. He's more into music. However, his family has always been doing this, and so he has to go into this field. Otherwise, he kind of gives up his inheritance and everything, and he doesn't want to do that. So here he is in his, I think, like 5th and final year at the school, and he has this rival who is called Grimm, and the two of them practice 2 different types of magic. So essentially, there are 2 different people that are involved in a spell. There is the spell writer and there's the spell caster. So usually the spell writers, they can create spells using words, they write them out, and then the spell casters use the magic within them in order to speak the words and intentions out into the world to actually accomplish the spell. So it's kind of like either a group project or at the least a partnership. For the most part, most people aren't able to do both. And our character Leo is a spell writer. However, there are like different levels of spells that you can write, and he has never been able to write like what's called a grand master spell, which are those higher level spells, without things going terribly wrong. So he is not looked upon very favorably by his fellow classmates. However, it being the final year, he is kind of forced to pair up with Grimm in order to practice their spells, and he is writing his little cantrips and little charms and everything, which is what he's able to write, and he's purposefully doing ones that he thinks will annoy Grimm. However, he bumps into another student at one point, one of those scenes where the paper goes flying, and he accidentally picks up a grand master spell, and Grimm ends up casting it on him, and this is how he gets that control spell. So at this point, our characters have just realized that they have accidentally cast a control spell, which is very dangerous because it's technically illegal. So they could both get into a lot of trouble even if they did it accidentally. So the two of them are going to have to go ahead and figure out what exactly they need to do to resolve this issue. So that is pretty much what has happened in this book. We've been introduced to our character. We get kind of an idea of how the magic in this world works. We understand that our character is not the most responsible person. He's definitely someone who likes to go out and gamble and drink, and he likes to play his music, and he's a little bit irresponsible, and he comes from a very wealthy family. On the other hand, we have Grimm, who seems not to come from a very wealthy family, and he is a very serious and studious person who puts a lot of time and effort into his schooling. He is almost like a scholarship student, I would say. So they are definitely opposites. However, I will say that so far I have really enjoyed their interactions. It's one of those rival situations where you could very easily see it tipping into a romance. So I'm definitely looking forward to that. I do think that the way that the author has described how the magic works is very interesting. I don't think I've ever read a magic system that works this way, where one person has to write the spells and someone else needs to speak them to actually have it happen. So that is definitely fun. They kind of mentioned a little bit that this kingdom of sorts is surrounded by an area where there is a lot of magic that impacts creatures in very strange and dangerous ways. And I believe in the synopsis it says that they have to enter the unquiet wood. So it does seem like our characters are going to have to enter this kind of magically unpredictable forest in order to find whoever wrote the spell, because essentially it seems that people write spells and send them to the university to be added to the library, and the spell was sent in with no name attached to it, which, you know, the people are like, that's not surprising because technically this is an illegal spell. Our guess is that someone got a spell rejected and they kind of sent this as revenge. Our characters are going to have to set off to find whoever wrote the spell in order to fix this situation. And like I mentioned, I think when I was telling you the synopsis, that this isn't going to be one of those situations where a character has control over the other character and they abuse that. Like already at the beginning, as soon as Grimm figured out like what was happening, it was very clear that he was not abusing his power, even though it probably would have benefited him to tell Leo that he forbids him from telling anyone that he was involved in this situation. Like, he definitely could have used his ability to control him to help himself out of this situation, but he hasn't done that. So I am looking forward to this situation being handled in a very healthy, yet potentially entertaining and humorous way. So far I'm enjoying it. It was really easy for me to fall into the first 50 pages or so, and I'm looking forward to continuing. My parents have just left. They are heading up to Bellingham for the night, so I will be home alone tonight. So I'm probably going to do a decent amount of reading because I'm not really watching any TV shows on my own. But I do have to go to the gym today. I'm not sure how long I will be there. Last week I ended up kind of tweaking something in my thigh, so I've only been doing my workouts that involve like the upper body, because anytime I do like a single lunge, my leg is like, and we're done. So today we're gonna go ahead and do an arm workout, and then I'm gonna do the Stairmaster. Last week when I did the Stairmaster, I couldn't do more than 15 minutes before my leg acting up. So fingers crossed I get through a full 20 minutes at a higher speed than I was last week, and hopefully that means that maybe on Thursday I can try my leg workouts again, because I swear, they always say it, and it's so true that once you start making gains at the gym, you're going to get injured, you're going to get sick, you're going to go on some sort of vacation, something that is going to interfere with your progress. And I was like, yeah, this is going really well. I'm getting a good rhythm. I kind of got like a workout plan that I really enjoy, and bada bing, bada boom, an injury in my thigh, which is a relatively big muscle. You know, it's like not really one I can ignore or anything. So that has been fun. But yeah, like I said, I'll be here on my own tonight. I'm probably gonna pick up food, to be honest. I have my meal prep that I'll be eating for lunch, so I'll probably indulge in a little bit of Hop and Drops, maybe some tater tots, a little BLT with some avocado. Don't mind if I do. And then hopefully I'll be doing a decent amount of reading, and I'll check in with you guys around the 50% mark.
All the colors come back so bright. Wish I could keep you in black and white. Sorta like a picture in a drawer. I don't wanna look at anymore, but it's too hard to ignore that I'll never not feel like yours. Holding on to someone new's the only time I feel like I'm still holding on to you. It's like an instant real
right, good morning, everyone. I am here for a 50% check-in. I am about 5 pages away from actually being 50%, but I am 1 on my break and 2 at the end of a chapter. I am 177 pages into this book. I feel like I'm enjoying it, but I'm not loving it. However, I will say at the part where I'm at, they are officially in the Unquiet Woods. It's their first day. They have decided to go look for this sorceress who is known for her counter spells. Essentially, they were looking in the library for different counter spells and she kept coming up. Now, the only problem is no one really knows if she actually exists. Like, she may just be lore. She might not even be a real person. However, our characters decide that it is worth the risk because there are some other aspects to the curse that just makes it really urgent for them to go ahead and find a cure for it. So they are in the woods at this point. They have found a guide. She is someone who forges in these woods. So she's like familiar with the monsters, and she's like, there's this area where neither monster or human can enter. I'm assuming that's where your sorceress is. So I can kind of take you there for a fee, of course. And our characters are like, yeah, that would be really great. So they're now in the woods kind of trying to survive all these interesting yet dangerous magical creatures that are in there. So I'm hoping that now that we are officially like in the woods, that things are gonna get a little bit more exciting, because I feel like so far the story has been a little bit slow paced, a little bit uneventful, because on top of that, the relationship in this hasn't really developed either. So like relationship wise, plot wise, there hasn't been too much going on here. I would definitely say this is a slow burn for sure, because even at this point, I feel like neither of the characters have really done anything to make me think that they like each other. Like, neither of them have shown any sign of like starting to develop feelings for the other one. They have definitely had moments where they are kind of like, hey, maybe you're not like 100% who I thought you were, you know, like maybe we could get along, maybe we could be friends. Usually our character Leo says something to mess that up so far. So I mean, there is definitely a little bit of a development within their relationship because of the forced proximity, where they're, you know, learning a little bit more about each other, but there's definitely like zero romantic vibes going on between our two characters at this point. So this is definitely like a very slow burn book. I also looked it up. This book does not have any spice in it because I was just curious. I looked it up. I was like, this book doesn't feel like it's gonna turn spicy, but you never know. But I looked it up and apparently it's like a 1 out of 5 kind of chili pepper book. So if you're into books that don't have spice in them and is a slow burn, so far this is definitely giving those vibes where the relationship is being developed very slowly. And on the one hand, I guess that's a good thing. The two of them have been avoiding each other as much as possible for the last 4 years. They probably don't know each other that well outside of their little rivalry that they have. So the fact that they are kind of slowly getting to know each other as human beings and as potential friends is a good thing. So, but I'm hoping that here in the second half, we're going to have more plot and also that we're going to have more of a relationship development. So it's just going to be a little bit more interesting, because right now, I'm not saying it's boring, but it's not like the most exciting. It's definitely kept me intrigued because I'm interested to see where the story goes, but it's been slow. It's been a slow moving fantasy so far. I'm not sure if this would be considered cozy fantasy, because I feel like cozy fantasy usually has relatively low stakes and are a little bit more slow paced and might be a little bit more character driven. And so far, that is what's going on in this book. So it definitely might be more in that cozy fantasy genre, which I haven't read too much of. Still, I'm having a decent time. I'm staying optimistic. I'm enjoying our character, even though he is a little bit of a screw up. I feel like he is definitely going through a growth spurt when it comes to who he is as a person, and it's not a very comfortable growth spurt. So he's definitely struggling a little bit, because for the first time I feel like he truly is facing the consequences of his reckless behaviors. So I am appreciating his character growth. We do only get Leo's point of view. We don't get Grimm's point of view, and sometimes I wish that we did, because Grimm seems like an interesting character, and I feel like at this point we don't get to know him that well, because Leo has this very set view of who Grimm is, and even as he's like seeing him in different settings and situations, he's still kind of reluctant to see Grimm as anyone other than his rival who looks down on him because he's not like as serious about magic as Grimm is. So he's still holding on to a lot of those like prejudices that he has against Grimm. So I'm hoping that here in the second half, you know, Leo is going to learn more about Grimm, and so we're going to be able to learn more about him, because I feel like I'm a little bit more interested in him out of our two characters. But other than that, it's a fine time. Definitely at this point not going to be a 5-star read, but I have no desire to like DNF it or anything. I did notice while I was flipping through this book to check how many pages there are that it says to be continued. So this is definitely not going to be a standalone book, and the fact that it says to be continued makes me think that maybe we're not going to get a full resolution in this book, and that it's not going to be like the beginning of a companion series, but like an actual series. So we will see. Hopefully not too much of a cliffhanger, because I don't know when the second book is coming out. And when did this one even publish? Oh, this one came out way back in 2024, October of 2024. So who knows? Maybe the second one is in the works. I haven't looked into it. I can look into it here in just a moment, but that is my 50% update. I'm having a decent time, not a great time, but am feeling optimistic that my enjoyment of the story is going to increase now that we're really in the thick of the plot. So I will go ahead and check in with you once I have finished this book. Hopefully it doesn't take too much longer. Today is Wednesday. We'll see if I need to cook dinner. I'm kind of waiting on my parents to let me know around what time they're planning on being home. If they're not going to be home until later and they're going to eat while they're still on the road, I might not cook, but otherwise I'll need to make plans for cooking and whatnot, and that will obviously take some time from this. But that is my update for now, and I will talk to you later. right, guys, you're on the desk. I am leaning on the desk, which means that every once in a while we're gonna have a little bit of an earthquake. But this is my second time filming this clip because I was filming it and then I was like, you know what? I think I want to change my rating. And so now I'm refilming the clip with my new rating. But I have finished Sorcery and Small Magics. I think I'm going to give this a 2.5 star. Now that might seem really harsh, but while I was reading this, I initially was like, oh, I'm going to give it a 3 star. But then I was thinking, like, what do I think a 2.5 star read is? To me, a 2.5 star is truly like the definition of a mid book, because you divide 5 by 2 and it's 2.5. So 2.5 like technically isn't like this is a terrible book. I know a lot of people don't give ratings under 3 stars. I don't give ratings under 3 stars very often, but I have a feeling that I'm getting a little bit pickier and pickier every year, and this is kind of the result of it. As I always say with my ratings, they're kind of vibe-based, so just listen to what I say. The star rating is just a starting point. So we're starting at a 2.5 star rating. A bit of a shock. I did not think that this would be a 2.5 star rated book. I thought I was going to have a really great time with it. Now, a couple things, maybe I just didn't know what I was getting into. Maybe I didn't know what this book was gonna be. I thought it was gonna be a fantasy story with a little bit of rivals to lovers, and that it was probably gonna be a slow burn, that maybe it was gonna have some humor in it, some fun magic, and some of those aspects are there. But others of them are not. For one, I would not consider this a romance. Now, there is technically going to be a second book. I don't know if this is going to be a duology, a trilogy, what this is going to be, but there is going to be a second book. I actually just checked the author's Instagram page, and the last thing she posted actually near the end of March was that she was in the early stages of writing book 2. Like, she's in the rough draft phase of it. So we're not getting that anytime soon. Do I want to read book 2? I'm on the fence. I'm on the fence about it. We'll see. I'll keep my eye out for it and decide then if I want to read it or not. But let's talk about this book. Like I was saying, romance, no. No. I could see towards the very end, like in the last couple of chapters, really, where the author was really sprinkling, like a little sprinkle, a dusting of romance was put in here by her, really trying to hint that maybe in the sequel, the relationship is going to develop a little bit. This book, by the end, I could see them being friends. I was like, yeah, it's given platonic friendship. If I'm being honest, I felt absolutely no sexual or romantic connection between these two characters. And I don't really think that you're supposed to. I'm not really sure. I feel like there was this one scene where they kissed and it was supposed to be like, oh, they're kissing. I literally didn't feel anything. I literally didn't feel anything at all. And I think there's a certain aspect of this book that plays into that I don't really want to say because it's spoilery. I will just say it has to do with kind of how the curse works, which made it very hard to distinguish Leo's real feelings from the feelings that were stemming from the curse. And so it made it very hard for me to be like, does he feel anything romantic, or is the curse just creating a stronger bond between them because they're sharing this curse in a way? Like, so I felt sometimes when like magic is involved that connects people, it's harder for me to kind of buy into the relationship because I'm like, are they falling for each other? Is this just some side effect of the magic? I'm not really sure, but I didn't feel any sort of connection between the characters beyond the fact that I do feel like they developed a little bit more of a friendship, a bit more of a connection, but not romantic. So I think that was the first disappointment because I did think I was getting a bit of a romance in here. And I love me a slow burn, but like, damn. This was like a slow burn, slow burn. I think if I had gone into this book and someone was like, they're not gonna like get together in this first book like whatsoever, like I have enjoyed books where there is zero romance. In the first one, I mean, some of my all-time favorite books, the Captive Prince trilogy by C.S. Pacat, the Foxhole Court series by Nora Sakovic, both of those, zero romance in the first ones, and they are some of my favorite couples of all time. So it's possible, but maybe I had the wrong expectations going in. My favorite part of the book was the magic. If I continued the series, it's because I feel like the amount of magic that we were experiencing was increasing throughout this book, and I liked seeing more of it, more of the creatures, seeing more of the possibilities of spells that they can cast. That was fun. So I'm hoping that if I check out the next book, we will get to explore that some more. It was entertaining. I did really enjoy the time they spent with the sorceress they were looking for, and I liked her as a character. Unfortunately, they only spent a few chapters with her, but that was a fun time. I would say that was probably my favorite part of the book. Outside of that, I don't think there was too much that I enjoyed about this book as a whole. I felt like plot-wise, it was a little bit messy, a little disjointed. I felt like there was kind of like we were in the school setting and we're kind of talking about life at school, and then we're kind of talking about parental expectations, and then we're talking about past grief, and we're with the sorceress, and then there's some sort of rogue sorcerers out there, and you know, they're criticizing the way that the current system is set up. It just like there was a lot of stuff that was kind of just floating around the book that was happening. And then one of my biggest issues of this book, and it was actually something that I kind of talked myself into realizing when I filmed this clip for the first time, and was actually what made me decide that this was in fact not a 3-star, but a 2.5. And that is that I don't really like Leo as a character. Yeah, sorry, Lovander Lovage. He's not really my guy. I don't think he really deserves Grimm. What I thought was really interesting and that I noticed, and I was like, hold up, that's what the problem is that when people talk about this book, they're like, hey, Grimm has the ability to technically control Leo. He has this magical spell that they accidentally put on each other, and he works really hard not to make Leo do things he doesn't want to. I think he slips up 2, maybe 3 times throughout this book. Barely. Like, he usually is really good about not doing it, and the only time he really does make Leo do things is when Leo's like, can you tell me to do something, either to prove to people, hey, this is what the curse is doing, or after they try a counterspell to see if it's still in effect. But other than that, dude is trying his hardest. He is trying his hardest. He is doing pretty much whatever Leo wants to do to try and get rid of this curse. He is going to places he doesn't want to go. He's doing things he's not comfortable doing. He is like breaking his own rules, and honestly the rules of the magical world a little bit. Like, he's constantly stepping over lines that he usually does not want to step over, and Leo is constantly bullying him into doing so, you know? And so it's like, people are like, this book isn't toxic because the guy who has the magical ability to control the other guy isn't doing it, but the other guy is controlling him. Leo, I feel, is controlling Grimm. Like, he's using the fact that he is the one who's impacted by the curse to guilt trip and manipulate Grimm into doing all of these things that he isn't initially comfortable with doing, and he gets really upset with Grimm if he's not willing to compromise like his morals and his values to do what Leo wants to do. And I was just like, I don't think I'm okay with the way that you're treating him. Like, you're constantly treating Grimm as if he has in some way harmed you, but he's working really hard not to. I mean, if you think about on a day-to-day basis how often you casually tell someone to do something, and the fact that this guy has managed to avoid doing that, like, I feel like that would take a lot of concentration. You would have to be like really particular and thoughtful about the words that you're putting out there. And then here's Leo just saying and doing whatever he wants and like not worrying about the consequences really like to himself. And people are like, you don't really care what happens to you. And I feel like sometimes that overflows into him not really caring what happens to other people. I mean, for the most part, he tries to care about other people, but he's just that reckless. And then he gets mad at Grimm when Grimm looks at him like, should we do that? You know, should we really do this crazy thing you want us to do? Like, yeah, of course he's gonna look at you like that. You literally are the reason you're cursed right now. Like, you fucked up. People are gonna look at you a little skeptical sometimes, okay? And you can't be mad about it. And then there was this one time where he's constantly pushing Grimm. He's like pushing his buttons. He loves to do it. He's constantly trying to piss him off. And, you know, they were having this conversation and Leo was being really stubborn. He's like, no, I'm not telling people this. I'm not telling them that. I'm not telling them. The amount of times that he like doesn't tell people stuff and then it like is too late and they're like, you should have told us. And then he's like, okay, next time. And then he doesn't. And then something bad happens. And they're like, well, if we had known this information, he's like, next time. So he was once again not revealing information that probably is kind of important. And Grimm says, just tell us why you are acting this way. Okay? So he was fed up. He accidentally made a demand, you know, in any situation like that. Any person would have blurted out, like, come on, just tell us, like, what is going on? Tell us what's going on. Anyone would say that. And so Leo is kind of, in a way, forced to reveal something he doesn't want to. And then him and Grimm have a conversation about it, smooth things over. Grimm is like, hey, you know, I'm sorry that happened. You know, and I just want you to know that I don't think you're a bad person, and I think you shouldn't be so hard on yourself based off of what you told me. And then everything's fine. Technically, everything is fine. It wasn't that bad. But the next moment, Leo is like, listen, I want Grimm to do this thing. I don't know if he would want to do it, but he's probably feeling really guilty right now. So I'm going to use that to my advantage. Again, he is manipulating Grimm into doing things that he doesn't want to do. So there is a character that I feel is controlling another character in a very unfair way. So I do feel like it is a little bit of a toxic relationship, but it's the other way around. And I don't think Leo deserves Grimm. I don't think he does. I feel like he had a little bit of character development in the last couple of chapters, you know, but maybe not enough for me to really like him as a character. And I'm trying to keep in mind that this is the first book and that this is a debut author and everything like that, but I just think that this book had too many things that either left me unimpressed, if not annoyed. So 2.5. I am going to be putting this on my series tracker. So we'll see. We'll see, because I'll be interested to see where the second book goes, because like I said, I enjoyed the magic. I really did. I thought the magic was fun and whimsical, and I had a fun time with it. So I would be interested to see what happens in book 2, to see if we get to explore that some more and have a fun time with it. But I would definitely be getting it from my library and not purchasing it. So that was for May. I may or may not continue that series. Funny. All right, guys, I am relocating you real quick. You are currently sitting on a stack of books because we are once again going to go ahead and spin for the third and final book. We are looking at the month of June, and the prompt for this is wings. Now, this could be anything from animal wings, angel wings, demon wings, airplane wings, insect wings. I had an easier time, believe it or not, with my Kindle books because I had like a few angel and dragon books, but I actually really struggled with my physical books, which I just realized I haven't put the physical books in the wheel just yet. So let me go ahead and do that real quick, and then we will go ahead and talk about the 10 options. Once again, we have 10 for this because we had a few more options than with the border. All right, here we are. I've gone ahead and added the physical books. So once again, we have 10 options here, starting with the Kindle ones. And we'll go ahead and just review them real quick. We do have 2 repeats from the previous category. Both of these had borders on them, and they have wings on them as well, so I just kept them on there. So that is A Dream of Fire, which was the fantasy novel. Obviously there's a dragon on it with wings. And then An Angel's Kiss, or is it The Angel's Kiss? It's The Angel's Kiss, and you can't really see it on here because it's so dark, but he does have wings, so his wings are on there, and that was a queer fantasy story. Then we have Inside the Sandcastle, which clearly has a dragon on it, and that is another fantasy male-male romance. We then have Icarus and the Devil, which is apparently a paranormal story. I was reading the synopsis and I honestly thought it was a contemporary, but the tags in Goodread have both paranormal and vampire, and then I think it also had shapeshifter in there, and I was like, I did not get that from the synopsis, but apparently it's a paranormal male-male romance. Then we have Prince of Ruby and Flame, and that is a poly or reverse harem kind of situation, fantasy, obviously. And there are some dragons in the background, and I don't know if you can tell, but this little I didn't mention it on the Icarus, those are wings, that little flame looking thing. I know these images are small, so whichever one I choose, you'll obviously see a closer image of it. Then going into the ones that I physically own, this was actually hard. I was kind of fighting for my life to find books, and I just barely found 5. We have Our Missing Hearts by Celeste Ning here, which I am not really sure if it's more literary fiction or if it goes into magical realism, but the feather, it kind of is breaking off into little birds, so the birds have wings. Then we have Falling, which has an airplane on it, airplane wings, and that is kind of a thriller. Then we have When Ghosts Call Us Home, and this has like swans, maybe they're swans, geese, some sort of bird on there that has wings. Then we have The Romantic Agenda. This one, you definitely cannot see it, but the word romantic, the eye, the little dot on top of the eye is a little heart, but it's made out of clouds that an airplane has just, it's the trail of an airplane. So there's technically an itty bitty airplane with airplane wings on it. And then we have Simon Sort of Says, and once again, you definitely can't see it, but towards the bottom of the book, there's a peacock, and then they're either ostriches or emus. There's birds on there. So those are the options. We'll see what we're gonna get. I'm kind of hoping that I get a Kindle book because so far I've only gotten physical books. So it would be nice to get something off of my Kindle, but we'll see. I will say this is the first time where I have some books on there that I'm kind of like, I'm kind of hoping that one doesn't get chosen just because I didn't have a lot of options. And so I put some books on here that I'm not like super eager to read right now, but we'll see. We'll see. I'm very nervous about this. So that's the first shuffle, second shuffle, third shuffle. I feel like I gotta close my eyes. After getting a 2.5 star, I really don't want to get another book that I'm not gonna enjoy. Come on. What is it, guys? You tell me. What is it? I haven't looked yet. Oh. Okay, I'm gonna admit, this was one of the ones that I was like not super eager for, but let me grab it. You guys are sitting on top of it right now, so give me just a second. All right, guys, so as you saw, I went ahead and selected Our Missing Hearts by Celeste Ning, and if you look closer, you see the birdies on there, so there are wings on here. Now, one of my all-time favorite books, Everything I Never Told You, is by Celeste Ning. So you may be like, Natalie, why don't you want to read another one of her books? Don't you want to read a book by one of your... I mean, I don't know if I would consider an all-time favorite author because I've only ever read one book by her, but I absolutely adore that book and still think about it to this day, despite the fact that I read it at least a couple years ago at this point. I feel like this is literary fiction leaning. And when it comes to literary fiction, I feel like 95% of the time it is boring. I don't care. It is too slow paced. It's just following people and their lives. And no offense to those people, but I don't care about their lives. And then the other 4% of the time, I'm like, this was a good time. I'm glad I read that. You know, it was kind of inspiring. It was well written. And then 1% of the time, I'm like, you have altered my life. I'm a different human being because I read this book. And that is how literary fiction works. But obviously, the majority of the time, 95% of the time, I don't like literary fiction books. I don't put them on my TBR very often because their synopses sound boring as heck. However, this book is on here because of the author, not because of the synopsis. Okay, I'm going to be honest, this synopsis does not do much for me. So in this book, we are following a 12-year-old Bird Gardner. That is his name. In fact, his name is Bird. So it's perfect for the wing prompt because his name represents something with wings. He lives a quiet existence with his loving father, a former linguist who now shelves books in a university library. His mother, Margaret, a Chinese-American poet, left without a trace when he was 9 years old. He doesn't know what happened to her, only that her books have been banned, and he resents that she cared more about her work than about him. Then one day, Bird receives a mysterious letter containing only a cryptic drawing, and soon he is pulled into a quest to find her. His journey will take him back to the many folk tales she poured into his head as a child, through the ranks of an underground network of heroic librarians, and finally to New York City, where he will learn the truth about what happened to his mother and what the future holds for them both. Our Missing Hearts is an old story made new of the ways supposedly civilized communities can ignore the most searing injustice. It's about the lessons and legacies we pass on to our children and the power of art to create change. Obviously, this book is going to be heavy on the themes. We have potentially some commentary on book banning, which is really big here in the US right now. Unfortunately, seeing as he is mixed race, we're probably gonna get that experience. I know that Celeste Ning's first book that I was talking about, well, I don't know if it was her debut book, but the book I read, the first book I read by her, Everything I Never Told You, was also following a Chinese American family. And I think I can't comment on if she did a good job or not because I'm not mixed race, but I thought it wasn't offensive. Otherwise, I wouldn't have given it 5 stars. So hopefully she does a good job with that as well. So clearly, this book has a lot that it wants to say, which sometimes is a good thing and sometimes is an overwhelming thing. This isn't a particularly long book. What scares me a little bit is the way that the synopsis is written makes me worry that it has a magical realism aspect to it. I don't know if it will. It might be straight up literary fiction. I don't know. But I'm not a big fan of magical realism. So if that is part of the book, it's just going to be another thing that I struggle with. I know that Celeste Ning can write really great relationship dynamics, that she can write really complex characters, and that she can get me really invested in what feels like I don't want to say a mundane story, but it's a story that you can see actual people in our world living. You feel like she is writing from real life experiences, and that adds to the story because it just feels so real and so dynamic. So I'm hopeful that I'm going to enjoy this book. It could be another 5-star. I don't know. It's Celeste Ning. She wrote one of my all-time favorite books. I mean, you know, I could hate this book. I could find it boring. I could find this life-altering. I could feel mid about this book. I honestly have no idea what I'm gonna get out of this book, but I think it's interesting that the wheel chose this because I have been neglecting this book and not putting it on any TBRs and not making any plans to read it. No matter how much I have loved this author, I keep telling myself that reading this book is going to taint my view of her because I'm worried that I'm not going to like it just because of my prejudice against literary fiction and magical realism, which magical realism might not even be in here. Like I said. All right, so that is going to be the last book that I am going to be reading for the month of June. I don't think I will be doing a lot of reading tomorrow. It is Friday evening. Tomorrow is my mom's birthday. Happy birthday to my mom. And she is having some friends over just for like some cake and conversation. So tomorrow morning I need to go ahead and clean my bathroom. I always do that usually on Fridays, but today I couldn't be bothered. I couldn't be bothered to clean my bathroom today. So tomorrow I need to go ahead and do that because my bathroom is the one that guests use. It's also the guest bathroom, I guess you could say. So it needs to be spick and span clean, and obviously I also need to get ready for the party and everything like that. And my sister is also coming down from Seattle to visit for my mom's birthday, so it might be a little bit of a busy weekend, might not have a ton of time to read, but as usual I will go ahead and check in with you around the 50-page mark. Let me see how long this book is. I want to say it is 325 pages long, so not a super long book. I think it's definitely the shortest of this video, but I also have a feeling that it's going to be the most thought-provoking book, meaning that it's probably just going to take a little bit more time and effort to make my way through this so that I get the most out of it. So I will go ahead and check in with you whenever I happen to get to about 50 pages, and fingers crossed I'm coming to you guys with positive initial thoughts. I feel like this hairstyle like really accentuates the amount of gray hair I have, but I have picked up my mom's gift. It is her birthday today, so I have picked it up. I'm gonna run and grab some coffee for coffee and cake. We ordered a large batch, but here it is. It's got the little bees on it. I think they all turned out relatively good. I mean, I didn't use a stencil. I'm kind of impressed with myself with like how similar they look to each other. And then I did like a little yellow rim. This was pink and the outside is blue. So essentially what I'm hoping to do is I bought some clear, like those little glass, I don't really think they're called rocks, but they're not marbles either. But you can like put them in here and then you can put some water in it, and it's like one of those little bee watering holes that they can go to, because we technically have a pond, but the water is pretty stagnant, so it's not the freshest. And then we have a water feature, which you've probably seen with like the water stone with the little water fountain in it, but the wasps really like that, so we figure we would make a place that hopefully will be better for the bees. And look at the little bee after the bee kind. He's itty bitty. So I am really happy. This color turned out really good. I was going back and forth on color. I was initially gonna make it all pink, but then I was like, I don't know. And I'm really glad that I went with this color because it's really nice. So I am obviously not an artist, but I am quite happy with this. So I need to go get the coffee, and then it is off to my mom's birthday party. Right, guys, I have my new little mushroom light here. Let me think. You see her? She's bright. She's very bright. So hopefully I don't look too washed out, but I am here to do my first check-in for this book, which is a dystopian. This is a dystopian novel. Did I know that? I did not. I did not know that. I thought for some reason I had magical realism in my head, and I'm not sure why. Because I started reading this book and I was like, this is a dystopian. It has that distinct dystopian feel. You're like, whoa, this is like 1984 all over again. And I went and checked on Goodreads, and it turns out that I never actually added this book to my want to read shelf. And so I went ahead and added it, and sure enough, the tags are dystopian. This is a dystopian sci-fi. So that changes things because I actually quite enjoy dystopian stories, and I don't really enjoy magical realism. So I'm a little bummed out that I didn't know that because I kept putting it off because I was like, I like this author, but I don't like magical realism. This isn't even, we can't know everything all the time. Sometimes we're just a little dumb, and that's okay. So I am 48 pages into this book, and we are following our character Bird, and his government name, I guess, is Noah. However, he always wanted to go by Bird, and his mother always insisted that people call him this. So even though at this point in the story most people are calling him Noah because his mother's no longer in the picture, I'm going to go ahead and call him Bird because that's what he calls himself. So we are following Bird. He's 12 years old, and he and his father live on the grounds of the university that his father works at. Now, his father used to be a professor there. However, after the events that occurred with his wife, he is no longer a professor and is now just working at the university library, shelving books. And they no longer live in their home. They are living in like an apartment that is provided by the university. So their life is not as good as it used to be. And this all stems from the fact that Bird's mother was a poet. And in this country, the US, there was an event known as the Crisis, which seemed to involve a lot of like riots and violence. And in response to this, as well as I'm assuming threats from outside forces, specifically China, it really seems like China is viewed as a massive threat to the US in this story. In response to this event, the crisis, the US created an organization known as PACT. PACT, and it stands for Protect American Culture and Traditions, which I know it just sounds bad. I gotta admit, I heard that and I was like, that doesn't sound very good, if I'm gonna be honest, because we all know what some people think American culture and traditions are, and it's not very inclusive. And this organization claims that it's there obviously to protect America from outside influences and misinformation, and it's there to make sure that bad people who have bad values and do bad things by their standards are removed, and that people know to report these people. Now, they claim to not be race-based. They're like, this has nothing to do with race. However, it is very clear that especially the Asian population is being more heavily impacted by this because of that tense relationship that America is having with China. So there is very clearly a race aspect to this, as there usually is. Now, obviously, this organization is very powerful and it has influenced American society on a very deep level. Most people really support it. It has really impacted the way that schools work. We are obviously following a 12-year-old boy, so we kind of see within school how many of his homework assignments revolve around making sure that he fully understands PACT and how it works and why it's so good. And also, there's no books in the classroom. They don't ban books because, there's the Bill of Rights. You don't ban books because of the Bill of Rights. However, they are able to remove books that they don't think benefit their students. And because books are always out of date because they're just not able to keep up with information the way that technology is. There's just not a reason to have them in the classroom. So they have found kind of like this workaround for book banning, essentially. As with all sketchy organizations, no matter how much they have brainwashed the general population, there are people who are opposed to it. And our character's mother was one of those people. And she disappears one day when he is 9 years old. He initially did not really know until people started to tell him that his mother was a traitor and that she was working with these people who are against Pact. And I think that this organization of people sounds really interesting with the way that they're going about it, because they're not creating another crisis. They're not going out and protesting in the streets. They are not being disruptive on a large level, but on a like minor level, they're being like an inconvenience, like an annoyance, like a little splinter in the society's side. They are doing like these little quirky disruptions, like dumping a truck full of ping pong balls into the river, and the river has their little heart splatter logo, and their wording are missing hearts. And this quote, "are missing hearts," is from Bird's mom's poem. And that's why she is seen as being such a big part of this group, because they are obviously using her words to get their message behind. They're saying, where are our missing hearts? How many more of our hearts will go missing, and they're talking about the fact that Pact is making people, adults and children, disappear, because our character at the beginning of this book receives a letter that he believes is from his mother. Now, the reason he believes that this letter was from his mother is because it was addressed specifically to him as Bird. And as I kind of mentioned, I am calling him Bird because he calls himself that. However, after his mother left, his father said, "No one is to call you Bird. You are now Noah." And so he's like, okay, this is clearly from my mother. However, this letter is just a bunch of pictures of cats. Just a bunch of little doodles of cats all over it. And this letter has kind of triggered him to kind of start thinking about things that his mother has said, and to kind of look at the world for hints of where she might be. And he is having these flashbacks to, it was probably just like a few months ago when this girl, Sadie, came to their school, and Sadie was removed from her parents because of Pact. Because Pact wants to protect the children, and that means removing children from dangerous homes. Dangerous by their standards, meaning that these are parents that are teaching their children things the government does not want them to teach them. And Sadie kind of opens Bird's eyes to the fact that a lot more children are being removed than the government really wants you to know. There's quite a lot of families that are being torn apart because of Pact, and a lot of them do seem to be families of color. And that's kind of where this "our missing hearts" thing is coming from, because their children are disappearing, the parents are disappearing, and people are like, hey, this is really devastating. This is really terrible. And I just feel like this world that the author is creating, the society, is very interesting. And she's doing it in a very natural and subtle way, where she was kind of like casually like, our character needs to go onto a computer and it was donated by this family, and then this was donated by this family, and this was donated by that family. And you're like, all of these families have very Asian sounding last names, and you can kind of see how society is targeting Asian families. So they are making these donations to the schools, in hopes of proving themselves to the government as being worthy of not being oppressed and persecuted, essentially. So it's just like these little subtle events and like sentences and descriptions that are really doing a great job of fleshing out this dystopian world, and I'm quite enjoying it. I'm quite intrigued by it and am excited to kind of see where we go from here. Our character has kind of decided that he is gonna see if he can find his mother. So I will be interested to see what he learns and where he goes and what people he might meet. His father has definitely kept him on a short leash, I think mostly out of fear. They don't really leave the university. He's just kind of supposed to go from school to home to school to home, and obviously this is going to cause him to break out of that bubble a little bit and take some risks, and hopefully they all pay off. I'm not really sure what kind of dystopian novel this is. Sometimes dystopian novels have happy endings, other times they have not the happiest ending, but with a smidge of hope sprinkled in there. So we'll kind of see what we're dealing with, but I will go ahead and check in with you around the 50% mark. I didn't have a lot of time to read it this weekend because my sister was down visiting, so that's why it took me all weekend to read 48 pages. But hopefully I get through this a little bit quicker and we'll be able to jump in and give you my halfway point thoughts soon. Alrighty, I am here for a check-in. I am not quite 50% through. I think I am about 20 pages from the 50% mark, but I have just finished part 1 of the book, so I figured it was a good point to check in with you guys. And I'm happy to say I am quite enjoying this book. I'm reading it relatively slowly. I feel like this is the kind of book that is making me think a lot, so I'm stopping and just kind of like sitting with the story and what it's making me think about and the comparisons that I'm pulling from the story to current day and everything. And so it's kind of a fun read in a way, in that I feel like I'm reading it in the way that I would read a book during like an English class, where I'm kind of dissecting it a little bit more than I usually would. So I am having a really good time with this. Celeste Ning's writing is absolutely gorgeous. I am loving her writing so much. It's so beautiful and it's feels very poetic without being like overly flowery, and I think it has just such a natural flow to it, which makes it really easy to just kind of fall into the story and fully get absorbed into it. So I'm having a great time, enjoying the writing, really enjoying the thoughts that this is making me have. The thoughts are still uncomfortable. As I mentioned in my first update, this book does make you feel a little bit uncomfortable because everything that's happening in this book is like one step above what is happening, like current day America. This isn't some sort of far-fetched futuristic dystopia. You know, this isn't like the Hunger Games. This is like, we could be here in the next couple years or so. And so it's really alarming to kind of see all the little things that are happening in this society and just being like, oh, that's how it is right now in our society, and we could easily get to this point. Obviously, we have the fact that books might not be banned here, but they are heavily restricted. And here in the US, we are facing a lot of book banning. In this book, there's a lot of people who are saying you can't trust what is written in books, which is clearly them trying to steer people towards questioning people who are like academics, who are experts in certain fields, who may contradict what the people in power are trying to see. And we see that in this administration. I mean, they love to say that they love the uneducated person, that we should not trust people who are at the top of their fields, who are the experts of their fields, questioning people when it comes to any sort of science. So that is something that we're seeing. We obviously also have families being separated because the government deems the child unsafe within that home. We obviously have families that are being separated due to ICE and the way our immigration department works. And we also have the foster care system, which separates families very often. All of these things happening that you can see in today's society. We also see like the whole watching your neighbors so that you can keep your society safe, so that you can report dangerous activity, but that also breeds a lot of distrust between neighbors, where you are constantly expecting the enemy to pop out of nowhere. And so people are distrustful of each other, which we see nowadays, where we have a lot of infighting, and it kind of takes our attention away from fighting the people that we should actually be fighting. We also see displays of racism in here, and we also see a lot of complacency. We see people that aren't actively taking part in violence or in oppression or in like reporting things that don't need to be reported. However, they are also not speaking out against that. And we see a lot of that in our society today as well, where there's a lot of people who aren't really taking any action against what's happening because, I'm sorry, my cat is like totally licking his butt in the background, sorry. They're not taking action against what's happening because it doesn't negatively impact them. So there are so many parallels between this book and the current worlds. And I also want to say that in this book, there are still a lot of like societal issues, such as like poverty. It's very clear, despite the fact that they have implemented this very extreme form of protection or oversight, yet as a whole, society has not improved, and a lot of the systemic societal issues that were there before are still there, and some other ones like citizen against citizen violence or racism, those things have escalated, and those are all changes that we can see in our society as it becomes more acceptable to become violent against certain minority groups. That is in no way improving society or really benefiting anyone, but it is actively harming people. So I'm definitely reading this slower than I thought I would, but I'm enjoying the read and I'm enjoying sitting with the story and taking my time with it. And I kind of feel like this would have been a good book to read in high school. I know that I read The Handmaid's Tale in high school, and I think reading a book like this alongside The Handmaid's Tale or George Orwell 1984, or even like Fahrenheit 451, things like that, or Brave New World. I never read that in high school, I read it later. But all those kind of like dystopian novels, this one definitely can join the pack with those and would be interesting to discuss. So that is my midpoint update. I will go ahead and check in with you once I finish this book, which will go ahead and wrap up this vlog as well. So I will check in with you probably in a few days or so. Hello. This is not the final update, but I just have a couple thoughts that have been just spinning around my head today while I have been reading this book. I am recovering from the stomach flu. So I didn't do like any reading of this book yesterday. I tried to do a little bit of reading, but my brain was just not at 100% capacity. So it was not this book. So I'm feeling a lot better today, hooray, and I have been chugging along through this book here while I battle my computer because it was low on storage and I was trying to like transfer videos and stuff, and I finally got it to work, but that was a pain. But while I was doing that and waiting for my computer to come to its senses, I was doing some reading, and there's a couple things in this book that have really hit me. So first off, we are now reading from someone else's perspective. I'm not going to say who it is, but they are an adult. And so essentially, we started the book reading from the point of view of a child who was born after the crisis and post-pact. And now we're reading from the point of view of an adult who has a better understanding of what is going on for multiple reasons, because they're an adult. They're not a child. And also because they were there before, during, and after the crisis. They have really had a front row seat to the shift in society. And on the one hand, you're probably like, well, if this adult can see it, why cannot every adult? Well, this adult spent a long time not seeing it. We're following someone who had their eyes opened quite brutally because they suddenly found themselves potentially being the victim of the policies that they were ignoring. It's one of those cases where sometimes you don't truly know how bad something is until it personally impacts you. And that is what happened to this character. And it kind of set them on this journey where they were learning more about pact, and specifically the removal of children from families. So one thing I found interesting about following this character, as they kind of talk about the deterioration of society and what society is willing to accept, is you see this increase in paranoia, this increase in fear, where everyone is expecting the worst from something. You read something, you expect it to mean the worst possible thing it could mean, especially if it is something that is written or spoken or drawn by someone that you will have been told you should fear. So in this case, anything that is written by someone who is Asian, obviously they can't be talking about anything other than something anti-American. And you just see that constantly increasing. And it's just that overwhelming agitation and fear within every individual within society that is just causing this mob mentality of having to attack this perceived threat, even though it's not actually a threat. There is no threat. You're just attacking an invisible enemy, and it's just so alarming to watch it. And it's very familiar because I've been watching it for most of my life here in America. Even more so these last few years, it's become more and more prevalent and obvious. Like, ain't nobody trying to hide the fact that they're scared and hate people that they don't have a reason to fear or hate. And so that is a big part of the story, and it's sad. It really is sad. I feel bad for the people who are the victims of it, who obviously are being told that they are evil, that all the problems of society stem from people like them, that they are trying to destroy society in some sort of way, and everything they do is scrutinized and questioned. And I also feel bad for the people who are doing the scrutinizing and the questioning, because they have clearly been so brainwashed and they are clearly just up to their eyebrows in anxiety and hate, and it's just such a terrible way for people to live, and that's how a lot of people are living. You have people on both sides who are suffering, and then in the middle you kind of have the people who are pretending like it's not happening. And that is exactly what we see in this book and in modern day, and it's just continues to be startling to read this book and honestly feel like you're reading a nonfiction book about what's happening right now. You're like, yeah, that makes sense. And the second thing I really wanted to talk about, especially about the pact and the removal of children, is the use of children as weapons. It is a technique that has been used a long time, a very long time. I am very familiar with the technique, and sometimes it's used in a positive way and other times in a negative way. Maybe the way I see it in a positive way, other people would say, no, that's also negative. I don't know, I'm not perfect. But when we talk about using children as weapons, I'm talking about protect the children. Think about the children. You see how this is negatively impacting children? We need to stop doing this for the benefit of the children. When I say a positive way, I think about using school shootings as an argument for why automatic weapons should not be sold, or why there needs to be more background checks or more training for people who want to use these weapons. Things like that. That I would say is a positive thing, saying, hey, these are being used to kill hundreds of children. Maybe we shouldn't do that. That in a way is using children to further a cause, because adults are being killed by weapons as well. But it's more impactful when some small innocent being is having their brains blown out. On the other hand, you hear it a lot when it comes to transness. They often talk about, well, you shouldn't allow children to be confused and to mutilate their bodies, and you shouldn't allow children to be exposed to that. How will you explain it to the children? It will corrupt them. They're gonna corrupt the children with their queer beliefs and things like that. And you also hear it when it comes to abortion arguments, you're murdering a child. So those are all kind of arguments that use children as weapons, and that is what PACT is doing in a way, because PACT is removing children from people who are saying things the government does not want them to say. And now everyone is walking on eggshells. Now everyone is watching what they're saying, and suddenly it seems like everyone is on board with PACT, because everyone knows if they say they're not on board with PACT, their kid is being swept off into the night and they may never see them again. So it is very much forcing conformity and obedience, and it's making it seem like everyone approves of what is going on. But in reality, we have people who approve it. We have people who are pretending to approve it so that they can protect their children. And then we have the few people who are either willing to take the chance or maybe don't even have children that are threatened, who are actively speaking out against it. So it's very much skewing the perception of how popular and beneficial this program is, because it's very dangerous to speak out against it. And there are few things that people are willing to do at the risk of losing their child. I don't even have kids. And I'm honestly, if I had a kid and someone was if you speak out against this program, we're going to take your kid and they're going to go God knows where, I'm not speaking out against it. I don't know, maybe that makes me a bad person. But I have a feeling most parents would agree, because no one wants their child to just disappear and you don't know where they are. That's terrible. That's horrifying. And it's a very powerful weapon that they have used against society. And the sad thing is that it's often your neighbors and your coworkers and other people in your community that are reporting you. And then you're just sitting there knowing that someone in your life said something that made the government say, well, we need to take your child. And you can't speak out against it. You can't complain about it. You can't go around begging people for help, because silence is what's going to increase your chance of getting the child back. I just think it's so sad. It's so sad for people to hear about these people who are desperately doing whatever they can to get their child back, even if it means going against their beliefs and their morals. But they've created the strongest kind of desperation within a person that you could. And they talked a little bit about how if you had the correct connections and if you made the correct donations, then it decreased your chance of having your child taken. So we once again have that issue of oftentimes these types of programs only really impact certain groups of people, and it tends to be people who are a little bit lower income. No surprise there. So this book continues to impress me with how much it's making me think and how relatable it is, unfortunately. And Celeste Ning's writing continues to be absolutely stunning. Continue to love the writing, and I am intrigued to see where we go. I have less than 100 pages left in this book to kind of see where the author is gonna go with this and what her final messaging is. So I will go ahead and check in with you, probably not tonight. I don't think I'm gonna read almost 100 pages in the next, it's already past 6 o'clock. Yeah, I'm not gonna be reading at least 100 pages, but maybe I'll finish it tomorrow. Tomorrow's Monday, but I don't have anything going on after work, no chiropractor, no gym, nothing. So hopefully I have plenty of time to sit down and finish this off and then actually come in with my final thoughts. Guys, it is the evening, so the lighting is a little fuzzy looking, but I have gone ahead and finished Our Missing Hearts. It is April 20th. I have to admit, when I started this vlog, I was definitely hoping to finish it by the 15th. Oh well. It is finished now, and I really enjoyed my reading experience of this book. I feel like it's been a while since a book has made me feel so many emotions and made me feel them so strongly. Like, this book gave me a lot of anxiety, but it also made me feel so much love. I feel like I've never read a book that has encompassed the love of a mother so well. Like, I don't often read books from the point of view of parents just because, like, I personally am not interested in being a parent. It was just the love of parents for children, not even just like a mother for her child, but like parents, because obviously we're hearing these stories, little snippets, little sentences of stories from people whose children have been taken, and you see what a big part of their lives their children are, and how much it hurts, how much it scars and cuts them deep to lose them. And it was just such an emotional read, and it was just so beautiful, and I absolutely loved it. And it was stressful. It was a stressful read, as it goes with like dystopian novels when it comes to that kind of climactic ending where you see the characters getting ready to do something that will hopefully bring about some sort of change and you don't know if it's gonna work and you don't know what's gonna happen to them, if they're gonna get caught. And it was just so stressful to read. But I just think it was such a beautiful ending. I think that the kind of call to action, the way that the author had her characters do that was just really beautiful and creative. So I really enjoyed this book, its messaging. The writing was absolutely stunning. Celeste Ning has a way of just writing characters that are so well fleshed out, and you just feel like you know these characters on a deep, visceral level. So honestly, she is an incredibly talented author, and I am definitely kicking myself for not picking up her work sooner. I will definitely be keeping my eye out for more work by this author. That being said, as far as ratings go, I think I'm gonna give this a solid 4.5 star. I feel like despite the fact that I got so much out of this book and I appreciate it and everything that it was doing, there were moments where I felt like it dragged a little bit. It is not a super fast-paced book, and sometimes I think that's definitely okay. I think the book benefited from some of the slower moments, but there were other slower moments that I felt like were either unnecessary or could have been a little quicker. Could have been a little quicker. So a solid 4.5 star read to end off this vlog, which is good because the other two books did not go great. Yep. So let's summarize real quick. So this was my Q2 Buzzwordathon challenge, cover challenge vlog. We started with the month of April, where the prompt was for the book to have some sort of accessory on it, and I selected Prince of Endless Tides by Ben Alderson. Now I believe I initially rated this 3.5 stars, but I do think I'm gonna bump it down to a 3. I think a big reason I'm bumping it down to a 3 is because during this vlog I kind of changed what I viewed a 3 as, because before I viewed a 3 as like a mid book, but now I'm kind of viewing a 2.5 as a mid book because of the whole 5 divided by 2 is 2.5. So this I feel like is just slightly above the midpoint, and so I feel like a 3 star is a better reflection of that. And then for the month of May, we had the prompt of a border, and we selected Sorcery and Small Magics by, oh, I remember, I looked up this name. It was something French, wasn't it? It was Maiga Dochi, and I ended up giving this 2.5 stars. This was really the book that made me go, 2.5 stars is a book that I didn't really enjoy, but I also didn't hate. I was okay finishing it. There are a few things within it that I enjoyed, but my overall feelings for it are leaning towards the negative or unimpressed, I guess you could say. And then of course we ended on a high note. So did this vlog go well? I would say I had fun. I really liked choosing the books randomly. I had a really good time with that. I've been wanting to do kind of a random spinner wheel picks my books for a while, so I kind of got to scratch that itch with this vlog, and I had fun with that. I also am really glad that I picked up a book that I was not planning on reading anytime soon. This is probably one of those books that I would have continued to procrastinate on, and here I am giving it a 4.5. I got so much out of this book. I have spent the last few days that I've been reading it thinking about it a lot, so really glad I got to pick this up. These are two books that I probably would have picked up a little bit sooner and everything like that, and unfortunately I did not love them. But you know, I got them off my shelves. We got a bit of a chunkier book off of my shelf, made progress in a series, didn't finish it like we thought we would. And then we got to a book that I was eager to read, but was unfortunately left disappointed by. So an interesting vlog, I'll put it that way. And I am interested to see how the next quarter goes. I hope that you guys are enjoying this little vlog series that I'm doing. I'm enjoying it so far, so I'll definitely be continuing it this year. And who knows, maybe I'll do it next year as well. I'm sure that Kayla will continue to do the Buzzword challenge because I know a lot of people really enjoy it. But that being said, I hope you guys enjoyed this vlog. Let me know if you have read any of these books and what your thoughts on them were. Let me know if you're taking part in the Buzzword challenge, the cover one or the title one. How's it going for you? Have you read any good books for it so far? And as always, guys, thank you so much for supporting my channel by watching my videos, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!